this is Kamila Hankiewicz, and I need to tell you what's going to happen. It's about you and AI. Ready? Theo, it's a pleasure to have you here. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. Looking forward to it.
So, Theo, looking back, London's history spans over centuries of innovation, from humble beginnings as Roman Empire, Roman settlement, a collection of villages, to a tech hub of Europe it is today. So, what do you think made London or UK become a global pioneer in tech?
In terms of this century, London had a lot to build on. It was a centre of immigration into the UK, so we had talents and ingenuity from across the world, and also the fact that London, the geographic location where it is, its rich scientific heritage, it has numerous universities. At one count, according to a statistical government definition, it had over 40 universities, several of which are real global players. And on top of that, you have a huge tradition of finance as well. So you have quite a lot of the ingredients there that would make London an important tech hub. I would also say London's proximity to Europe is fundamentally important. And people in the tech scene also tell me that time, that the fact that London is
Time zone.
time zone. So London is a place where you can, in the same day, do business east and west, the United States, or further to the east in Asia. So that's a kind of inbuilt advantage that London has, and I think we really see that as the combination of those factors has seen a real acceleration in the kinds of tech specialisms that we have in our city.
Yeah, and I'm the real life example of that. I'm Polish by origin, but Londoner and British for a few years now. So I migrated because I wanted to explore something.
And I'm American by origin, and
Oh,
so
you're
so
American. Okay.
and naturalized in 1999. So
Okay.
I'm also part of that immigrant story.
Right. Do you have any Greek origins, Theodore?
No, not that I know of. No,
Okay.
just
So
northeast coast America.
right, because your name is derived from Greek. So I was just wondering. Yeah, and of course we had World Wide Web developed by a British guy. So it was invented in CERN, right? But counts as British
Yes,
invention.
absolutely.
Okay, so let's dive deeper into your first-hand experiences, maybe with today's technology. As the CDO of London, you have, I'm sure, seen lots of different projects, lots of groundbreaking projects. Um, and you are the first CDO of London, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I've read on your Medium paper, which you wrote in 2016, I think. From what I've read, it was created in the image of other digital leadership roles. So the first CDO role was in New York, then San Francisco, and some other European countries, so cities. So what did London decide? Like, why did London government decide to create such a role? And yeah, what are your responsibilities?
So, London's journey towards creating a chief digital officer post did come through the influence of what was happening in New York and in other places. In those two cities, they saw the development of their tech sector. That raised questions about the delivery of public services and the way in which public services can innovate and partner with universities and tech firms in order to provide citizen benefit. So when we looked at this in London, and I was, as it happens, one of the people who did look into the question of how it was shaped with the business community. At the time, I was a local government elected representative in the London Borough of Camden, so one of our 32 boroughs that govern London.
That's my next question. But
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
And the question was put to us is what kind of model do we need to adopt in London? And
Mm-hmm.
whereas certainly in New York, there had been a strong emphasis on the digital economy engagement of the chief digital officer role, in London,
Yeah.
there was felt to be a need not to have another role championing the tech sector. We have quite a few of those.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more about how we collaborate together as a city. So our
Mm-hmm.
32 boroughs, which are pretty sovereign entities, how do they come together so we can do things at scale
Mm-hmm.
rather than have 32 versions of a
And
smart city?
duplicated efforts.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Definitely.
And so the question about scale is really, really important, because fundamentally what drives digital change is data, and the ability to share
Mm-hmm.
data and get large data sets enables you to do more things. Equally,
Mm-hmm.
to be attractive to the market, um, 32 opportunities of populations of around 250,000 isn't as attractive as 4 or 8 or 16 boroughs coming together and giving really sizable populations and business opportunities as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can derive many more, like you can see much more depth and more patterns into this, and right, so
Right.
you can just transcend into different communities, and you can just do much more with a smaller number of resources. Okay, so and in the same article you wrote, we are committed to working with the tech sector and other cities across the world to build a bold people first approach to the way data and technology serve those who live, work, and visit our great city. So you act as a link between citizens, businesses, and the city, right? So how do you engage with each group and make sure that everyone is heard?
Yeah. So when I was appointed in September 2017, London had a track record on smart cities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that was primarily implemented by Transport for London. The
Mm-hmm.
congestion charge, uh, effectively a smart city function about 6 years before the term was even coined. It's a set of cameras linked to a national database, linked to a payment mechanism in order to do something, which was reduce and manage congestion in the city. The Oyster card and contactless payment are smart city plays. Transport for London's open data, which powers apps which improve wayfinding and choice of public transport to use in our city. These were all things that were already in place, and also City Hall had championed open data. So when I got into post, we had a series of kind of London-wide plays, but the challenge for us is like, how do we get more into the needs of citizens as they are felt on a very local level, and
Mm-hmm.
how do we develop um, new solutions to tackle urban problems? So I went on a listening tour. Sadiq said, go out there, talk to people about what it is to be a smart city. We had over 80 meetings. We with innovators, with the public. We did polling. We used our online platform, Talk London. Um, we created a digital tool which used transport data in a funky way to just
Mm-hmm.
draw people into the conversation. And what we found was this: that people were citizens of London were a little bit wary of the term smart cities, because it,
Mm-hmm.
for want of a better word, it was too solutionist. It was too technology first rather than
Yeah.
people first. That's takeaway
Mm-hmm.
one. Takeaway two is that innovators who, remember at the time, 2017, 2018, they were really at the height of the sort of tech bubble, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
People were putting forward ideas for you know drones delivering pizzas and flying taxis, and
Still
yeah,
happening, it's just a different
all of
term.
that stuff. And they were like, hang on a second, yeah, there is of course a space for that kind of cutting edge innovation.
Yeah, sci-fi books.
Yeah, but fix the plumbing. So they
Hmm.
wanted us to ensure that we had a modern fibre connected city.
Hmm.
London, of course, being an early adopter of technology back in, from 19th century onwards, had a
Yeah,
large copper legacy.
yeah.
And
It
they,
still has, like in central London, like you said, like it had this technology before. So, for example, in Poland, we skipped the wave,
yes,
so we have new fiber, like we
yeah,
have very fast internet. And I remember, like up to I think 3 years ago in Oldgate, where I live, we didn't have
yeah,
fiber.
yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, there's been massive increase in that. 4% of the city was full fibre in in 2017. Now that's 55%, and 89% of the city is gigabit capable. So that's been a total step change. But you're absolutely right. There were sort of pockets of places we couldn't figure out who owned the land or the buildings, and getting legal agreements and all of those things. We had to just cut
Mhm.
through all of that. So fixing the plumbing was really important on connectivity, and also data. Data powers innovation. How can we create a better way for people to do data projects, whether they have commercial application or they've got civic application? And so that kind of people first approach coming from citizens and innovators saying fix the plumbing has really
Mhm.
guided our work since then.
Yeah, that's it, and it seems to be working, right?
It's definitely going in the
These
right.
days.
It's definitely going in the right direction with
Hmm.
connectivity, and also as we build a new data platform for the city.
Hmm. And where would you say it's still there is still much more work to be done? In which areas?
Well, I think that, I mean, just if we take those two priorities, they're probably missions that will never be fulfilled, but you can certainly turn the dial massively on them. I think London has a kind of like, it's still got a remaining challenge on connectivity, in the sense that foreign ownership of buildings means it's quite difficult to identify who
Hmm.
owns these things.
Hmm.
That's in the hands of the government. Presumably they feel it's of some competitive advantage to keep all of these things non-transparent. But some areas of central London are only hindered from being gigabit capable because of overseas ownership and the
Yeah.
opaqueness of that. We'd want to see that change. And then with data, the our journey on improving our data platform has been done alone. Um, the central government has not shown any interest in the power of local government data. Imagine if we could free up and share the transactional data, not just the demographic and geographic and place data, but the transactional data of citizens, so that we
Hmm.
can get real insights into people's lives. We can develop more responsive services and things like that. At the moment, that
Hmm.
data lies behind legacy technology barriers with third party suppliers, often with restrictive contracts, which don't allow us to freely get our own data and share it.
Hmm. Hmm.
It Sometimes local government councils are not as data mature as they could
Yeah.
be, but there's a
Hmm.
relationship between the two. If you can't use your data, you kind of tend not to invest in data teams, and also the normal kind of data sharing barriers, consistency in application of law, and things like that.
Yeah.
So there is a huge amount of work that we have to do in London in order to make that flow of data. And as I say, we're doing it alone, because when
Hmm.
government talks about data and government and AI,
Yeah.
we're in a hot AI summer, so it's talking about AI a lot. It doesn't talk about freeing up that vast resource, which is local government data, which is superior to the kind of data that central government collects, and could
Yeah.
make a real difference to people's lives.
Hmm. No, I know something about it. I like around siloed data, fragmentation, those kind of things. So I work, we like I work in a tech company as well,
Hmm.
and we work with one of the UK police forces.
Hmm.
Same problem. There are 43 different
Yep.
forces across the UK. Lots of times, data is not shared,
Hmm.
and like you said, it has to be. It has. You have to have advocates from the top in order to and for those kind of things to happen to really take benefits, because otherwise, like you acting alone, even if you have great examples of how much like, of benefits data gives, it's just like always a
Yeah,
waste of
and I
time.
mean, like there is a lot of fragmentation on a
Yes.
local level across the United Kingdom. You have fragmentation between police forces, fire brigades. The NHS
Yeah.
is contrary to public and international perception about the NHS being a kind of centralized monolith. It is
Hmm.
actually an extremely federated system wrapped
Yes.
together
Yes.
with one big brand, and
Yes.
it has legacy technology challenges. It has data sharing challenges. However, it
Hmm.
is a really good example of where, when the government turned the money tap on about 3 or 4 years ago and said, how do we use health data that we should
Hmm.
be able to get for
Hmm.
better purposes, whether it's R&D, healthcare productivity of the actual NHS, or commercialization opportunities. Its
Hmm.
investment there has created a much better data ecosystem which is ready to go. So we would say,
Yeah.
well, if that's in play and it could be made even better with local government
Hmm.
data, imagine
Hmm.
what you could
Hmm.
do on kind of non-clinical things like
Yes.
understand the relationship between housing quality and health, and
Hmm.
um,
Exactly. Yeah.
to start looking at the relation between environmental changes and health. All of these things, I think, if there was that investment in government data, including local government, we would
Hmm.
have a really, really exciting potential for the future. So I always take a look with a little bit of a pinch of salt when you hear government ministers sort of talk
No,
about
no, no.
AI and all of that
No,
stuff.
I
Like
know how it works.
without
It's just yeah,
yeah, without
talking.
without the
Lots of talking.
data, where you're not going to get anywhere. And it's a really
Yeah.
obvious point, but
It is, and it's such a waste of resources, right? Because even on the individual level, you have people moving across UK.
yeah.
So you, lots of times, the files need to be recreated in another county or whatever. Like if we are talking about healthcare, it's just so much replication.
Well, not only that, it's England in local government divided into local government authorities is got lots of local authorities covering
Yeah.
not a huge, relatively speaking, not a huge amount of space. So we
Yeah.
calculated that a third of the population of London lives within um, less than a kilometre of another administrative boundary. So like there is just a third of London's 3 million people. So it's like that should just be a driver for more data
Yes.
sharing. So this has been a real investment from us, from our journey from being just an open data sharing platform to developing data services, bringing on board what's called non-open data in order to
Hmm.
solve specific problems. And it's not just about the data, it's about the question you want to solve,
Yes.
really.
Yes.
So that's where kind of a I think another advantage of London is that we've got a really, really good kind of resource of people who've done digital transformation and design
Hmm.
thinking, and they can sit
Hmm.
down with the kind of domain experts and the traffic engineers and the people looking at flooding and air quality and all of that stuff, and say, well, what is the problem you want to solve? Let's define it, and then let's go out and get the data. And I think that just flips that smart city idea on its head, where you kind of get the sense that in some smart cities, in perhaps in Asia or otherwhere, it's all about the collection of data and having massive
Hmm.
numbers of data sets and live feeds and things like that. But what do you want to do
Mhm.
with it? So a
What do
kind
you
of
do with it?
purpose-led approach to data to solve problems
Yeah.
is absolutely key, as
Yes.
well as obviously being able to join that data together.
Yeah, that's very true. And like you said, in London, we are lucky to have people who speak the language, right? Like they can translate between of the problem and what it can be actually achieved with tech, with data.
Yeah, and that you won't solve things through just having a bunch of data analysts looking at data
Hmm.
alone.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
It obviously help, but it's teams of people getting together. So the the way of working, the culture, the process of collaboration is fundamentally important. And I can't remember who said this, but it was a really astute observation from someone in, I think they were in the Norwegian government at a conference I was at,
Hmm.
and he said that actually that this decade could be characterized not solely by artificial intelligence being the game changer, but it's
Hmm.
collaboration which will be the game changer. And
Yeah.
that
You
is
mean collaboration with AI or
no,
with
just
tech?
collaboration, the ability
Collaboration.
to
Okay.
collaborate with others, with
Hmm.
data
Hmm.
and design in order to solve problems large and small. Um, the ability of the internet to connect people, to talk to people, to uh, without gathering them all in one place, the
Hmm.
ability to share ideas, all of this collaborative force could actually be, um, a less obvious but much more of a kind of silent shift that's happening that has greater productive results. And of course, we need to caution against AI being a proxy for collaboration or doing
Yes.
collaboration well.
Yes,
And
and inclusion of people who don't really know how to use it as
right,
well.
right, exactly. So if we go down a road where artificial intelligence means that you don't talk to people, you're
Hmm.
probably not getting the most out of artificial intelligence,
Yeah,
as you should do.
yeah. Hmm. 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 Okay. Um, Another question, or
Hmm.
maybe like going back to when you started nearly 6 years ago. You said September, right? Um, Lots of things have changed, and so did your role evolve. We had pandemic, we had lovely Brexit, we had other few major crises along the way. How did you how did you make sure that city adapts to like digital initiatives um, to what's happening, uh, like knowing that there are so many unknowns,
Mm.
and what interesting findings did you learn from this crazy experience?
So one of the first things I did on getting to office was to set up a new team of people who are actually located outside of City Hall. They're not part of the City Hall structure. So I set up effectively a new institution or agency to help us think about design, use of data, and new forms
Hmm.
of delivery. And they're called the London Office of Technology and Innovation. And effectively, that is a regional deployable resource that's
Hmm.
close to London's 32 boroughs and their CDOs. So through that, we are able to problem solve, do shared projects together, um, offer our services to traditional sort of delivery departments to say, hey, there's a different way of thinking about this, going about this. And so that's just celebrated its fourth anniversary. It's really well respected outside of the UK as well as inside of the UK as an example of regional collaboration. Um, they have done projects from um, identifying how we plan for future demand in electric vehicle charging stations,
Hmm.
through
Hmm.
to new business models for adult social care, through to working with net zero teams, specialist net zero teams on how they can improve their delivery, on retrofitting the city, how they can think about the role of technology in doing that and define the problem in a way that helps their procurement. So all of these things are a way in which local government can talk to itself rather than sometimes facing the challenge of local government not being confident about data and technology and talking to outside partners armed with less information as they should do. So there is a strong emphasis on learning and also learning by doing, and creating consistent methods so that in a sense, going back to that point about 32 boroughs, that we're greater than the sum of our parts. So that really came to play in the pandemic, where we were able to do what would seem to be quite niche projects on data sharing between various parts of London, but were extremely necessary in order to deliver services. There was a lot of work done on how we get data from the community and voluntary sector, civil society, who were often at the coal face or had set up mutual groups and enabled to, in order to feed people hot meals during the pandemic, or help people in other ways. How do you get data from that and incorporate it within council systems so that you can meet need most effectively? And then fundamentally, the big project that came out of the pandemic that the London Office of Technology and Innovation is delivering now with Good Things Foundation is setting up a digital inclusion service for London. So this is a triage where a citizen can be signposted to free basic digital skills courses delivered by civil society or adult education, a SIM card, a place for corporate telcos to donate as part of corporate social responsibility SIM cards for disadvantaged people, but one place to put them, so a data bank, and then how they're and then they get distributed to people. But if someone has a need that isn't basic digital skills, but is like, I can't get connected, they can go and get a SIM card. And then the third bit, which is starting with public sector, when they do an IT refresh, donating their old laptops to the Good Things Foundation, who are then refurbished with a partner of theirs, and then distributing those laptops for free to disadvantaged Londoners. And so far, we've distributed in the first year of this program 2,000 laptops to Londoners, and this is growing every day.
That's amazing. I've never heard of that, but yeah, it's
It's
a
called Get
perfect
Online
example.
London.
Get online London. Okay, I'll check that definitely. And share the news with my network. And I also heard about the really great initiative, which City Hall collected some data showing that right now 54% of Londoners are either financially struggling or just about managing in the current economic crisis. And I've read about the poverty prevention challenge. Uh, I just saw you when you were like liking the news from Sadiq Khan. So this competition was launched by London government. I don't know what was your involvement, but you will tell me in a second. And from what I understand, seven companies, smaller companies, won.
Mhm.
Some of them are using AI, and they will receive some funds to bring their ideas to life to support Londoners.
Oh yeah, a part of our approach on collaboration is to develop our expertise on open innovation or making open
Mhm,
calls. So this is where a public sector partner says, using design thinking, this is the
mhm.
problem we need to solve, or this is the area we need to concentrate in, and then setting that call outside of their normal procurement framework to the tech sector to come up with solutions to try and solve it or turn the dial on a problem. So we've been working on open calls since 2018. Done some great work on things like prototyping with one borough council and the electricity grid and a firm called Connected Curb, curbside electric vehicle charging. So you can just sort of put a charging point into a curb, rather than creating new piece of kit.
Did it go past prototype or
Yeah,
did?
no, that's been tremendously successful, and there are tens of thousands of them rolling out across the country.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
testing an idea with a London borough. So it's a firm gets the opportunity to learn about how you do business with a public sector organization. So coming across and solving problems that they might not have anticipated in their own product development, and also working with electricity network as well. So national grid and again, the same process base. And the learning goes both ways, because of course the local authority learns how a tech firm operates and what its drivers are, what its pain points are, and so does
Mm-hmm.
a national agency like National Grid. So that's just one example, and we've done various iterations of this. We did some open calls on during the pandemic. So mainly more in social innovation, people redesigning high streets, access to public amenities like toilets and community
Mm-hmm.
gardens. So a lot of work happened there on a series of projects about how we make neighborhoods better places to come back to after lockdown. And then the kind
Mm-hmm.
of third tranche of this has been the top priority, going back, starting about 18 months ago, has obviously been
Mm-hmm.
this huge strain on people's finances, on cost of living.
Yeah.
So we've worked with one of the largest boroughs called the London Borough of Barnet, um, on finding innovative ways in which the cost of living crisis can be tackled. And so they set out the call, they engaged civil society and the tech sector, and in the end, 7 different products and services have been identified, from an AI that scrapes data from online supermarkets' online offers, and effectively creates cost effective meal plans for you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, which is really interesting. I don't think people have thought about using data
Yeah.
like that, through to a process that can help triage and support refugees. Of course, London was extremely welcoming to Ukrainian refugees, and over the past few years, there's been a number of big refugee pressures. Afghan refugees at one point
Mm-hmm.
after the pullout. So how to support suddenly a increased population that's quite desperate is a really fundamental thing for local authorities here.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a service around that which I think the Barnet officers find quite interesting. But so in short, um, these are ways to prototype and test new ideas. They might not make it to mainstream service delivery,
Mm-hmm.
but they might. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important that whilst we're tirelessly working on cost of living crisis, and so is civil society, using tried and tested methods to help people, there still needs to be room to think about what we could do, especially with digital tools. So that's what that's about, really.
Are there any ways, or like what are the best ways for smaller companies or even citizens to come up like, for example, if they see some problem they want to work on, not like, is there the other way, like the like the individuals coming to you, if yes, how can they do it the best way to be seen and heard?
I mean, we do have a really big online engagement platform where people can
Mm-hmm.
shape policy. It's called Talk
Mm-hmm.
London. It's got about 70,000 members. It's recently been redesigned, so it's much more user friendly than it was in the past. It was originally spun up at around the time of the Olympics,
Mm-hmm.
to engage people, but it's been through sort of various iterations. Now it's been kind of completely rebooted with a with design thinking at its heart, and that's our form of participatory democracy in London. We had for a long time a very rich tradition of crowdfunding
Mm-hmm.
using online platforms. So we would set aside, we would say the mayor will match 50% at 50% a community project that you want. Um, it's just you, the
So people
community, have
voted
to
on that.
raise the other 50%. The
Mm-hmm.
amount of 50% might be tailored slightly according
Mm-hmm.
to just a take on the social capital of the given area in
Mm-hmm.
London. So it might be a little bit more, um, but fundamentally, that was a really interesting way in which we used established crowdfunding platforms. We sort of tweaked them for London,
Mm-hmm.
and people were able to get actively engaged. And one of the problems with a kind of global tech hub like London, and indeed other cities is, what's the connection between, let's say, a finance city worker or a tech worker who comes home late, has just
Mm-hmm.
moved into the area? Where's the sense of community? How can they get involved?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of idea of like kind of dormitory streets, that
Mm-hmm.
aren't as integrated into the local community. And crowdfunding was a really great way of bringing people together and also
Mm-hmm.
allowing local businesses to contribute to good causes. So that's done everything from community gardens, um, through to sort of rebuilding community centres. I used to live in Crystal Palace. There's
Mm-hmm.
some wonderful Victorian, life-size dinosaur models there in the middle of the
Okay.
park. They needed a lick of paint and a replastering, or whatever you do to, replica dinosaurs, and
Yeah.
that was crowdfunded locally, and people put money in. So
Mm.
so that kind of engagement, I thought, was extremely successful. And that model, actually, during the pandemic,
Yeah.
using a crowdfunding platform, we could repurpose to give people services like pay it forward. So your
Mm-hmm.
favorite cafe might have been struggling during the lockdowns, but you could help them out with their cash flow by saying, "I'll take
Yeah.
10 coffees next month." um, and also the crowdfunding was also available to help shops in that time of great uncertainty, where they didn't know what,
Yeah.
it's difficult now to think back on it, isn't it? You just think, oh, well,
Exactly.
so a lot of them survived, and maybe some of them don't. And but at that time, we didn't know if there was going to be a vaccine. We didn't know how long it's going to go on for.
Yeah.
um, the UK in particular seemed to have particularly long lockdowns. So all of these things were at play, and I think digital tools really helped that as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the idea of crowdfunding and also marketplaces, like things like, I don't know if you've heard of Olio,
Hmm.
where people just share like leftovers of like food
Hmm.
when they go to holidays or whatever. And it's just great that you feel like you belong to community and you just distribute your resources in the right way without like
Yeah, I mean, I think
waste.
I think I think on open innovation, which is where your question started, is there a way for a citizen to trigger an idea? We're on a journey on open innovation where
Mhm.
we want to build up our expertise as a city to do things that are kind of maybe slightly higher on the risk area. And I see the future trajectory of that to be
Mhm.
much more um, open to citizens to suggest problems
Mhm.
and ideas. But fundamentally, at the moment, it is something where we're using as a kind of learning by stealth technique to
Mhm.
transform public sector organizations that have had a quite a set way of doing with things, and
Oh
say,
yeah.
actually, this
Yeah.
is a different way of thinking about this.
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
so yeah, we're on a journey on that one.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. Like smaller startups, as you know, working with large organizations with lots of legacy systems and lots of people who are afraid of change. People just don't like to change, right? So
Right.
it's just very difficult to suggest things, change things, if you don't have advocates within organization or the community you are trying to do something. Okay, so let's go back to your day to day. I know you will tell me that there is no such typical day, but how does your day or week look like, more or less?
My any given week probably involves uh, a lot of time outside of City Hall. I do a lot of visits to talk to entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
Um, I engage with a lot of the councils a lot. My preferred mode of business is to meet people at where they work rather than people coming to see
Yeah.
me at City Hall. Um, and our particular focus at the moment is on building the Data for London platform.
Hmm.
So there's quite a lot of work going on to develop that in a technical sense, but also the things that we need to do to make a kind of easier, more discoverable, helpful data ecosystem than the one that
Hmm.
we had in the past.
Hmm.
Um, so um, so there is a fair amount of doing as well as proselytizing.
Okay. And since your role involves being a digital ambassador, but how do you make sure that tech sectors receive or like have the access to full range of talent, especially after Brexit? Like how can we still make sure that Europeans and global talent still wants to still sees London as attractive place to build business and live?
I mean, firstly, I'd say that, yeah, Brexit has made things more difficult, but ironically, London, which didn't vote for Brexit,
Hmm.
um, is more resilient than other
Hmm.
areas of country that did. And so,
Yeah.
although there has been an intensification of competition for talent, London's still a great place to do business. But it may have been able to deal with this because it was able to attract more talent from around the UK. Um,
Hmm.
so that's one of the weird ironies of Brexit. Um, I think that London has a certain brand and image which is attractive to entrepreneurs. Um, I think the way in which we've been able to, that we've been long been a champion of open data, and I think that there was a really good call back in the day at Transport for London and also at the GLA not to try and commercialize a lot of data that we were able to link to. I don't think that would have worked. Actually, we probably would have spent more on a team to raise money than we would have raised, to be honest.
Hmm.
But I think that gave a really good signal to the tech sector that we were open for business. There are lots and lots of different factors that help London. I also think London made it's kind of reached a level of maturity in its tech journey where specialisms have just sort of like created other specialisms. So we don't just talk about life sciences, or the video games industry or things like that. There are specialist clusters even within those that kind of spin off and feed off each other. So
Hmm.
my colleagues in London and partners would call this the benefits of agglomeration. The fact that there are so many strong specialisms in this city, it's created a momentum of even more specialism. Um, so we think London's got an extremely strong future despite the ill winds of Brexit and the just sort of general patter of the government, which has been for ideological reasons has been focused on beating up the capital as if beating up the capital will win them friends elsewhere. I mean, maybe short term gain, long term pain for them on that, but um, the basics of London and the culture, the excitement, the skills, the experience, it's just all there in abundance.
Hmm. And like you said, there are specialties within London boroughs, right? Like I saw that Camden was it is special. is more focused on data.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it was it was your your result of your budgeting and the things you've been doing when you were working. How many years have you been working for London, for Camden Borough?
I was at Camden from 2002 to 2017. So
Okay,
we did a
8
lot of
years.
open data. They've done loads of good stuff since then.
Okay, okay. And how does managing one borough differ to what you are doing right now?
I think you're closer to the people because boroughs deliver services, um, and you're closer to people and the service users, and you see the impact more. You know, that can be quite challenging sometimes, but it's also a very good feedback loop. If you're in a strategic authority, you for a much wider area,
Hmm.
then it's an entirely different role, really.
Hmm.
My job, however, is to kind of I think the challenge with local authorities is they do so much. What's the can they carve out an amount of time to think about change and
Hmm.
innovation? And so my job in a sense is to ensure that the challenge isn't insurmountable. All councils have a challenge over budget, but they shouldn't have a challenge over time. Getting
Hmm.
their limited resource of people who can think about innovation in a room and create time for them is a big task of mine and London Office of Technology and Innovation.
Yeah, that's true. Difficulties with limited resources. How can we involve citizens in conversation about how we design systems, AI systems, how government is using AI to build a safe and transparent city? Like I know that you are very big on transparency, on data transparency. So what do you see as a good practice?
I mean, I think that first of all, us set aside AI and just talk about data. We are creating lots and lots of, business, government, and others are creating lots and lots of data services of various levels of complexity for people all the time. So let's have consistent methods around that,
Mhm.
about how we talk and design around the needs of the user, like a methodology of creating a data service. Let's show our workings. Um, let's be very clear about the purpose for which we're doing things. So I think there's some fundamentals that kind of cut across, whether it's an AI or creating any other service. Um,
Mhm.
there's a live debate on a national level about whether you should enforce transparency on algorithms and what to do about bias with
Mhm.
data. Those are the two main topics. Now, on transparency, I think it's totally legit to regulate for a level of transparency or total transparency in algorithms, but it only takes you so far. On my mobile phone, every time there's an update, there's screeds and screeds of text on terms and conditions that I roll past in
Mhm.
order to get to Facebook
Mhm.
or use my iPhone. Someone calculated it would take 150 hours a
Yeah,
year
that
for
is.
the average
Mhm.
person to read the terms and conditions, and even so, it's take it or leave it. It's not like you can amend
Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
So what's transparent? What's algorithmic transparency going to do when we already experience that? So it's important for governments to take action. It's important for regulators and civil society. But let's not kid ourselves that it's going to lead to huge public engagement. I just want
Mhm.
people to just embrace the reality of that.
Yeah.
So do it, but you know, do it with that caveat. And secondly, on bias, all data is bias, really. So I think you need to start your discussions about engaging people on the basis that all your data is biased.
Mhm.
so so let's have a discussion based upon reality here. that transparency only goes so far, important as it is, and bias is locked in. And I think if we see AI develop with those two bits of understanding, then it helps us get away from this idea that it's a magic line of code that's totally going to um, alter our lives for the better,
Hmm.
and gets us into a more human, practical discussion about the benefits of it.
Yeah, yeah. And like you said, it's only as good as the data you feed it in.
Yeah, but most
So
data is not in a very good state as well. So I mean, I'd also
yeah.
say that this is so for critics of AI, or people think that there's about to be a takeover. Um,
Mhm.
there's still a long, 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 long way to
Oh yeah,
go
of
because
course, of
um,
course.
I think people overestimate the quality and shareability of the data that's held.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
just simply not been built to be shared in
Hmm.
many cases or computed. It's been
Yeah.
it's been built to make a certain vertical system a bit more efficient. you know,
Hmm. Yeah.
so that's been the driver. And that's a different question.
Yeah. But like you said, like if we can have computers help us to understand the jargon, the language, the text, like like in case of your app agreement, terms and conditions, if we can interact, like let people interact with the data easier, I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there is really, really exciting potential. Um, Gartner said that it took, what was it, sort of like two years for Twitter when it was launched to
Mm.
reach a million followers, and ChatGPT is like
5 days.
5 days.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so this is on people's plates. We need to respond to it, but
Mhm.
um,
But be aware of the shortcomings
yeah,
of
yeah. It's
of hallucination and other things which
quite.
sometimes.
I mean, a chat. You say Chat GPT convinces you that it's that it's giving you the right answer. So people
Yeah,
still have to
yeah.
use their critical skills to sort of like, it doesn't quite sound right, or
Mhm.
it's wanting to agree with me. I mean
Yes,
that's it's programmed to do that,
yes.
as well as
Hmm.
what it's effectively two things. It's programmed to convince you that it's right. So that's no different from someone putting an argument or opinion piece in a newspaper and you going, I don't quite agree with that. And it's also programmed um, to ensure that the answer does not include racist or other unethical content. There are two processes going on whilst that cursor is flickering there. Yeah, so going back to there's a kind of middle way here of like, would the algorithm being transparent give me more info about that, or would ChatGPT telling me, or people at ChatGPT, this is how it works, which is different from the
Hmm.
transparency. It's the explainability thing, and
Sure.
that I think is really important.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. But how can you how can you make sure that you are projecting the facts and at the same time protecting some people who may abuse it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these are questions we'll have to work through.
Okay, let's end on a light note. As someone involved in smart city initiatives and AI, you must have fascination with futuristic ideas. Are there any sci-fi books or maybe movies or authors you enjoy that explore technological and societal advancements?
I was always a fan, and I do pick it up occasionally of Asimov's
Okay.
short stories. I think it's just remarkable, and but extremely futuristic. But I think my near term horizon is probably more than I'd like dominated by Minority Report, which I thought was an extremely effective film in showing the kinds of
Yeah.
technologies that could easily come into to play. And you can even imagine the kind of experiments with
Mm,
facial recognition and advertising, as the character walks into the Gap shot with
yeah.
someone else's eyes, happening today. So